Right, done. Let's get this meeting rolling.
Sign you up.
Emperor there. So you looks like a good crowd here tonight.
Hello there. How are you doing, sir? Sign you up.
Mr. Dunn, I'm so
I got to roll mine up. I think those guys on those boards, I think they roll these things around or something, change them around or something.
I'll give it to you.
I think I will.
I think I see it.
Probably need one.
I ain't need it.
Thank you.
I'll get it before we get there. I got it. I'll get it.
animal shelter.
This time I'd like to call the November 15th Anderson County Council meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone here. This time I'd like to ask Councilman Tom Allen if he'd lead us in invocation and pledge allegiance to, please. All rise.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessings you've bestowed upon us. We ask that you give us guidance this evening as we conduct the business of Anderson County, and that we do it in a way that will be most beneficial for the citizens of this county. And as always, we ask that you remember those members of the armed services who are defending our rights throughout the world and allow us to have meetings such as this. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
Time moving on to item number 3, approval of the October 11th, 2011 called meeting. Approval of the minutes. Are there any changes or corrections to be made to those minutes?
Motion.
Moore makes a motion to accept as is. Have a second.
Second.
Second, Mr. Allen. All in favor of the motion, show of hands. Opposed, like sign, so the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to 3B, approval of minutes of the November 1st, 2011 meeting. Are there any changes or corrections to be made to those?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Wilson?
On page 18, about the 8th line down, it says director dated Thursday, October 4th, and then question marks. The time was 4:39.
439 with the question marks.
I can't understand it. Stand me, but and then on page 28, it's about halfway down under my name, and it says there was a former employer, and it's supposed to be employee.
Employee.
And that's all I found. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Anyone else? You make a motion to change, say it with those change.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the minutes as posed.
Have a motion to accept the motions, the minutes with those changes with Ms. Wilson, second with Mr. Moore. All in favor of the motion, show of hands. Opposed, like sign, so the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. At this time, before we go to item number 4, we've got a couple of housekeeping things. Item number 5 has been pulled from the agenda. Resolution honoring Mr. Brady Thomas has been pulled. Also, I would like to ask the consent of council. They don't have a problem. Some folks here from representing the Homeland Park folks is got to leave, and they'd ask for those 2 items to be pulled up. The resolution number 9, also the 8C and 9. If we can pull it up after citizens' comments, would that anybody have a problem with that? All in favor of consent agenda, please. Appreciate it. And one other thing, we talked about last council meeting, the list of roads we all looked at and was going to get with Mr. Hawkins, had any questions about. That didn't make the agenda, but they need to get that where they can get to the ANANS committee, Transportation Committee, rather Seafund Committee. It's going to meet before we meet again. Is there anybody got any objections about moving on with that tonight, discussing it, putting it back on the table? Got a problem with it? All in favor of unanimous consent, please raise your hand.
This is on the road list.
The road list we talked about last meeting night. Shows it carries unanimously. Now, thank y'all very much. Moving on now to item number 4, citizens' comments. Please, Mr. Pitts, call us your name, step forward and state your name, please, and your district, and please keep matters on the agenda items, and please address the chair, please. Mr. Pitts.
Mr. Chairman, first up is Elizabeth Fant.
Elizabeth Fant, District 3. Just want to say a point of order. I guess that's what it's called. We have various items that are on the agenda, and I have seen in the past where Mr. Waters has excused himself on a vote that dealt with Duke Power. Ms. Wilson has excused herself on a vote that had to do with Equine Council. Mr. Crowder has excused himself on a vote that had to do with Anderson University. And that might be it. But there's an item tonight, 8A, an ordinance amending Section 1082 of the Anderson County Code pertaining to the fire code enforcement and matters related therein. Not sure exactly what that's going to be, but since Mr. Dunn is a volunteer fireman, he needs to excuse himself from that vote, in my opinion. I have also seen that there have been other issues that have gotten voted on that I believe that he should not be voting on due to his sideline profession. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will address that when it comes up for everybody wondering about it. Mr. Powell.
Mark Powell, District 7. My concern tonight, and I understand our agreements that we have with people like ACOG, and I understand buildings that are sitting around that could be used, but as you read through that contract and the deal that you're willing to give those people, I would just ask you as a taxpayer, were they not paying rent where they were? If we're going to give them the use of a facility that we think should be condemned and is falling apart, that's why we moved our people out of it. It kind of scares me that we're going to put somebody in it because we think it's good enough for them but not good enough for us. If we're going to give them that building, the only people we have in it is like the 1 or 2 rooms down on the first floor that you walk in, and they're going to take over, I guess, the floor where the judges and people used to be. $150 a month lease agreement. With us paying all the utilities is $157, $159. With us paying the utilities seems ludicrous. If they're going to use a building for free, $159 is free. If they're going to do that and we only are using part of the building, let them pay the power bill on our behalf and still charge them some rent because they would have to pay the power wherever they are. And I see where we're going to give them up to $20,000 and we will fix the building, or they'll do repairs up to $20,000. But anything over $20,000 we're going to have to spend. Well, that's a little bit ridiculous also, because if the air conditioning system goes out and we have to repair it and you plan to tear that thing down, come on. Because, I mean, the building across the street's 20 years old and you've already had to replace hundreds of $1,000s worth of controls for it. because they were obsolete. So I would ask you to please, I understand WorkLink, that's a good thing. I, as an unemployed person, have never had the privilege of getting any benefit from that program. I don't understand who does and who don't. But I do wish y'all would look at that contract and understand that we own it and we don't have to give everything we own away. Even though it can be good for society, I still don't think we have to give everything that we own away to anybody who walks in the door and needs a space. There was one other, and that's called an emergency ordinance. And I guess you put that word out in front of it. If you read into the law tonight, it becomes that instead of having to have 3 readings. I would have thought that would have been a resolution instead of an ordinance, but I thought that was interesting as well. But that's my main concern. So I do hope each one of you looked at that agreement, and unless I've read something wrong, it's another deal where you've given away my tax dollars for somebody for free who could probably pay rent and pay the power bill instead of us having. We could save some money for a change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pitts. Moving on, we said earlier, we stated we're moving 8C up, so moving on to number 8C, which will now be 5B, we'll call it, an ordinance finding that Homeland Park Water District, South Carolina may issue not exceeding $1.5 million of general obligation bonds and one or more series to authorize Homeland Park Water Commission to issue such bonds and provide for the publication of notice and said findings and authorization. Mr. Pitts.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we were approached recently by the Homeland Park Water District. They are wanting to issue $1.5 million in bonds for upgrades to their system. And under state law, the county council is required to pass an ordinance blessing that, for lack of a better word, and also when we get to it, also by resolution calling for a public hearing on that bond issue. This will not be an obligation of the county in any way, shape, or form. It'll be paid by the water district through the millage and not through the monthly service charges, per my understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Pitts. Anyone have any questions, any comments, Mr. Pitts? We have a motion. Motion, Mr. Moore, to move forward. Second, Mr. Crowder. Any discussion? All in favor? Mr. Floyd, go ahead.
Chairman, but I talked with our administrator, Mr. Burns, today, and I was privileged enough to get here early enough to talk with the attorney in charge of this, and I am completely, I have taken their word for what they told me, so I'm satisfied with it. And I'm speaking now because that is to be my district when we get through with the new zoning, the new district.
Morning. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All in favor of the motion, show of hands. Opposed, like sign, so the motion carries unanimously. Now we'll move it, moving item number 9 up under that. Call it 5C, a resolution R 2011-053, a resolution calling for a public hearing to be held upon the question of the appearance of not exceeding $1.5 million of general obligation bonds, the Homeland Park Water District, South Carolina, to provide for the publication of the notice of such hearing. Pitts, you want anything else you want?
This is just that's that resolution I talked about.
Do we have to do?
Yes, sir.
We have a motion. Motion for Mr. Moore to move forward. Have a second, Ms. Wilson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, show of hands. Opposed, like sign. The motion carries unanimously. I think Water Park people's here. I think the attorney's here, and I know the chairman, Mr. Ritchie's here. Y'all got anything to say, anything? We appreciate y'all coming out and hope we can be of service to y'all. Yes, sir. Go. It's been fun. We got some students here from T.L. Hanlon High School. Welcome y'all here tonight. Special. Appreciate y'all coming out and be of any service to y'all. Y'all let us know during the break or something. I'm glad to have y'all here tonight. This time, we're moving on to the road list that we had at the last council meeting night. We all had a chance to look at it and review it. That up. Does anyone have any questions or any comments about that? Crowd, you get your concerns took care of? I know you had some last time.
Well, basically, I acquiesced to Mr. Holt Hopkins with the hopes that you all would treat District 1 a little better the next time around.
I heard that. Yes, sir. Anyone else?
So everybody remember that. I want to read that into the minutes, so.
Give you that thing. Do we have a motion to move forward with, then move forward with the list to the C-Fund Committee?
Motion.
Crowder makes a motion, Ms. Wilson seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, show of hands. Opposed, like sign, so the motion carries unanimously. Thank y'all, and this time we'll be back on our scheduled thing. Item number 6, third reading, number 2011-033, ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a special source credit agreement between Anderson County, South Carolina, and Delta Power Equipment Corporation and other matters related thereto. This will be our third reading in this matter. Do we have a motion? Motion, Mr. Moore, to move forward. Have a second.
Second.
Second, Mr. Allen. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, show of hands. All opposed, like sign, so the motion moves forward unanimously. Y'all moving forward to item number 7, ordinance second reading, number 2011-036, ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of fee and agreement between Anderson County and Robert Bosch. This is a calls for a public hearing. At this time, we'll be going into a public hearing. If anyone wishes to speak to this effect, please step forward and state your name and address the chair. It's time to be a public hearing. Anyone wishing to step forward to this, please step forward now.
I appreciate all the companies here in Anderson County, but I was told by an Anderson County official that this coming year, I told you all this last meeting, don't worry about the reassessment, which is on the agenda tonight as well, whether you get it or not. What's going to be scary is this coming year, the reportioning because of the fee in lieu ofs are piling up. The pie is still what you guys spend, but the part that the businesses spend this year is going to be astronomically different. Therefore, our taxes are going to have to go up. He said, don't worry if your house goes up 20, 30, 40%, because it won't. But if it did, that would be a lot less than what's going to happen because of all the fee in lieu of redoing of paperwork. Came from Jackie Hunter. He told me that. It's not hearsay. Because when I came out and said something about when y'all look at our houses every 5 years, he said, don't worry about that. That's not the problem. Do we need to give companies this? Yes. Why do we need to give it? You got down on the later in the agenda where you're asking the state level to reconsider how much we charge in taxes. That's what I meant to say earlier. I think it's down near the bottom of the list for tonight. We need to change our 10.25% to something more equitable so people will come here because their taxes are lower. But this year coming, Jackie Hunter says it is going to be terrible to us, the homeowners, you all who own a home as well, because of what's happening. I don't know if it has to do with the new law that changed and everybody's coming in to redo their fee in lieu of because something got extended and everybody's getting it all done early and ahead of time. But I was told, don't worry about reassessment, and that needs to be done this year. It needs to be done now. He's had 4 years to get his program done. Get it over with. Thank you for giving Bosch what it takes to keep them here. Thank you for asking the state to change the law so that you won't have to give away our taxes. But look into what Jackie Hunter told me. Don't worry about reassessment. Worry about in fee in lieu of this coming year, 2012. It's going to hit us as homeowners. I had property in Greenville. They did some same stuff. A rental house at 6% went from $420 a year to $1,260 because the pie was here. They changed what they did for corporations. So all the makeup had to come from us because people like you, whether you're Anderson County, Greenville City, Greenville County, you won't shrink the pie for us. You will spend at the same somewhat level. So in order to do that, when you get less from somewhere else, you have to make it up from us. And Jackie says you got a major makeup coming from us this coming year. Please look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Hearing none, public hearing to be closed. First, Mr. Nelson, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Members of council, and Mr. Chairman, Mr. Burns, Mr. Pitts, and Ms. Edelman, thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. Bosch is taking their fee agreements. They're not asking for anything additional. They're extending, not asking for any extension of their fee agreement. They're merely combining the two languages of the 1998 and the 2003 old-fashioned lease agreement into a simplified fee. They will be paying the same thing for the same amount of time. However, they've added an additional $40 million of capital investment to what they had already. So with that additional $40 million, there will be additional tax. This is, all of this is allowed by state statute changes. And there are a number of industries that are looking at ways to make themselves sustainable. And we have a number of industries that are expanding and talking about expansion. So we have great opportunity out there to offset whatever losses some folks may imagine there are out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nelson. Do you have any comments, questions? Hang on for a second. Anybody have any comments, questions, Mr. Nelson?
Just that we're delighted that Bosch is doing well. I think it bodes well for our economy when a family-owned company invests in our county, and I saw where they're expanding over in Fountain Inn, I believe their hydraulics division. So hopefully that'll mean good things in the future here too. They're a wonderful company. One comment that relates to our gentleman who just spoke. Unless I'm sadly mistaken, I don't think there are going to be any revised downward fee in lieu of tax agreements. I think a lot of those agreements will simply be extended and will basically be still receiving the same amount. It won't go to 10.5%. There were, I know, there was one instance where we had an existing property that was paying the higher rate that had been basically abandoned, so to speak. The industry had left, but they were still paying their taxes, and we did receive less with a new fee in lieu of tax agreement on that specific property once it went into a fee in lieu of taxes. However, the potential there is we're gaining probably about up to 1,000 jobs in time, starting out about 450. And were we to do the vote again, I would still vote in favor of that. I still think the main impetus needs to be put back toward our General Assembly and ask them to consider putting everything at 4%. I think at that point we put quality controls in place and our economy would expand even in these bad times. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. You want to have anything else, Mr. Nelson? Thank you, appreciate it. Do we have a motion? Motion, Mr. Moore, to move.
Second.
Second, Mr. Crowder.
Sorry.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, show of hands. Opposed, like sign, so the motion carries. And now moving on to number 8A, ordinance first reading, number 2011-03A, ordinance amending section 10-82 of the Anderson County Code pertaining to the fire code enforcement matters related thereto. Mr. Pitts, you speak to me, what reason would I have to accuse myself, it be me or me, I'm just going to put it in layman terms, if me or my immediate family was going to get profit from this?
No, sir, not all. This was a request.
I've been talking about, that's the reason that'd be a reason for me to be accusing myself.
That's correct, yes, sir.
And me being a volunteer for 30 years and not getting nothing but giving them, this is a government entity going back to them, and they're not going to profit from this ordinance or whatnot, so I just want to make that clear. Appreciate it. And never have I voted on anything that I would have made any money on for the fire service, and it being volunteer, and plus being a government entity on top of that, but they don't profit neither. And what this is changing, and I'll read it to you if y'all turn to 8A. What this is doing is just cleaning up some language to make it easy on the fire thing. This is number 1, section 10-82. We're changing, they're asking, and this is coming from the Fire Chief of Anderson County, they're changing right now, section 10-82 of the Anderson County Code is hereby amended by deleting the phrase county fire inspector and replacing it with county fire chief and/or his or her designee. That's all this amounts to. I put that in form of a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Moore. Do we have any discussion? All in favor of the motion, show of hands. Opposed, like sign, so motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 8B, ordinance first reading, number 2011-039, ordinance directing that the implementation of real property assessment in Anderson County be delayed for 1 year as authorized by statute and other matters related thereto. Mr. Burns.
Mr. Chairman, you have before you an ordinance requesting that reassessment be delayed for 1 year, and that's basically what it is.
We have a motion. Motion, Ms. Floyd. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Allen. Are there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Wilson.
This is a hard one. Revenues are down, expenses are up, property values are down. I don't see any advantage any way we can go here. I don't profess to have a crystal ball, but I don't believe our home building and real estate industry will improve dramatically in the next 2 or 3 years. It's just a tough environment to operate in. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to, Mr. Crowder?
I'd like to ask a question. I do not expect an answer tonight. In reading it, if you look at the paragraph, which is 3 from the bottom, it says, including an anticipated software update for the county computer-aided mass appraisal system, the additional time is needed to allow completion of the first phase of the CAMA. Somehow, until today, I did not pick up on first phase, so I would appreciate it if Mr. Burns and Mr. Freeman could just be brief, and I don't need it right now. Tell me what the other phases are and the time frame and the estimated costs for those 2 phases and how they might impede the assessment if we grant a 1-year extension. Since this is just the first reading, we have 2 more shots at more clearly understanding what it is. I think the next time council meets, council members should encourage all the citizens to come and voice their opinion, how they feel.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Mr. Chairman, we're still going to have a workshop on this?
I'm going to bring it up, yes, sir.
Okay. This is a tough one because we listened to one of the top appraisers in the whole county and one of the top real estate agents. He was summing it up for probably 8 or 10 real estate agents that was here earlier in the year. If we do put it off and the real estate market continues to go down, we could probably lose significant amount more revenue by putting it off 1 year. If we went ahead with the reassessment right now, and if we did not put it off and went ahead and did with assessment now, it would be at today's values and everything, and everything would work out. But if you go and put it off for 1 year, and then the real estate market continues to go down, we're going to still lose a significant amount of revenue. And I just feel like that the people are hurting out in the county right now, and anything we do to prolong their agony, so to speak, but I just think we need to give them any kind of break they can get right now. And it looks like to me that this is a money grab for the county. I mean, that's just my opinion. I just feel like that we should let the people have the breaks in on their taxes with their lost revenue and what their houses are worth on the market now. I just feel like that we would be doing a disservice to the citizens in the county, and I just wish y'all would really consider not prolonging this for a year.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Waters?
I did. I took the liberty to meet with Mr. Freeman for about an hour, so I won't I won't tell you what we talked about for the whole hour, but to sum it up, basically, what Mr. Freeman was asking for is just what Mr. Crowder had mentioned. He's got some new computer equipment that he's wanting to look at. Just as he had said at the last meeting, I don't see where this is going to make a big difference either way. And just like I said, if I say too much about the meeting we had, I'm afraid it'll won't be enough. So I'm in support of Mr. Freeman, putting off the assessment. So appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Floyd.
Thank you. Am I correct, or did I just dream this? But didn't Mr. Freeman make a presentation at the last meeting where he went through all of this and told us about this new computer system and why it was needed, and we all asked him questions? Didn't you do that?
Yes, ma'am.
I thought that was already done. At that time, I think we just took it for information.
Ma'am.
We didn't vote on it, but I know that we have done this before. We have postponed the reassessment before. In fact, this is something that's done all over the state. Could I ask Mr. Freeman to?
You got something, yes, ma'am?
Mr. Freeman, would you please come forward just for one question? After having already explained this thing to us at the last meeting, would you please tell us the pros and cons, just one more time, of putting off this reassessment until next year, as opposed to doing it this year?
First of all, it doesn't matter when we implement it. It's still a 2011 reassessment. It'll be based on 2011 sales. That won't change. If we put it off 5 years, which we're not going to do, it's still based on 2011 sales. Pros, it gives me time to implement with both my old software and my new software. Roughly half of the property, I think I've said, is transferred since 2006. Reassessment was implemented in 2008. The 50% that hadn't transferred, most of that is capped well below market value. And when you do a reassessment, you make adjustments to the levy that you don't do in a normal year. You can't have a windfall from the reassessment, so you have to roll the levy back and then readjust. Those capped properties, I'm one of them, a number of y'all are, those capped properties stand to be hit twice when we implement the reassessment. First of all, they're capped well below market. Now, I know the sales are down, okay? I know that. But they're going to have to go a lot lower before we get to most of those capped taxable values on property that were capped at the last reassessment. So some of those capped properties may even see an increase in value at the next reassessment. You take that into consideration with a change in the levy that could have to be rolled forward to raise the same amount of money that you have in the previous year. Those people could possibly get hit twice. The ones that have transferred, for the most part, have appealed their values. It goes on at fair market value in the year after the sale, after December 31st, 2006. All those transfers, some of them have appealed more than once because, the market does continue to go down a little. So they'll come back and get us to look at it again.
So it's really a no-brainer, right?
Well, I don't think there's going to be a huge difference either way, but
yeah, I don't see it being a huge difference, especially if by waiting 1 year, we will still be able to use 2011 figures.
That's the law.
That's the law. Okay, so we wouldn't be hurting our people in that way. And this cap thing could play a very important part.
Yes.
Yeah, in doing this. And then, too, you would have the equipment that you need to do a better job.
Yes, ma'am.
The new equipment to infuse with the old equipment to get this work done.
Correct.
Okay. And isn't this done all over the state? I mean,
Yeah.
this is just...
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. I thank you.
I'll give you more information on the phase part of it, Mr. Crowder, but what we're working through now, phase 1, is the main part of the software. Phase 2 will be enhancements that we do to it at no cost to the county, hopefully, because we have other counties in the state that are interested in the software and will hopefully buy into it, and that'd be a way to pay for enhancements.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Allen?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'll put this in real simple terms so even I can understand it. Let's say I bought a house for $120,000 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and now this year it's worth $100,000, okay? We put off the assessment until next year, and let's say my house now has dropped to $85,000 next year. It's still going to be assessed at this year's value, the $100,000. So it's not going to make any difference to the property owner.
The reassessment will be based on
2011. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Wilson.
I think where a lot of people have a terrible taste in their mouths, Mr. Freeman will well recall, was it 2003?
Ma'am.
We had this room packed. Our taxpayers and citizens were out in the hall all the way down into the street. It was a windfall. When the reassessment was done, not only did we have the growth factor, but we also had the evaluations had gone up, the appraisals had gone up, and people got their tax bills, and especially those who were in the commercial end of it, rental homes and all, they were hit so hard. I thought we were going to be tarred and feathered and run out of town, and I was opposed to what was pulled back then, but it was such a bad situation. People were hit so hard with taxes that the uproar not only stayed here in the county, it went to Columbia, and that's when the cap, and I've forgotten now, is the bill number.
Act 388.
Act 388, thank you. That's when that went in. Now we have the cap, and, you know, that's no panacea either, but it did provide some help. Anyway, that's where we're dealing with our citizens who still remember that terrible situation, and they think that this delay in reassessment is basically the same kind of situation, and I don't think it will be.
Not at all. No.
Ms. Floyd?
Okay. Mr. Freeman, you remember the situation she was talking about?
I remember 2003. Now, I can't control the levy, but...
That was the levy, yeah.
But, you know, I remember, yeah.
I don't remember people being in here all out in the street.
Yeah, it was one particular night that was the case, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just thought the only time I remember people being in here all out in the street and every single thing when they fired Michael Cunningham.
The big problem in 2003, the biggest problem was the lake property.
The lake property, yeah. Yeah. The lake property, yeah. But but that was the levy was mixed up in that situation as well. It just wasn't the reassessment thing. Yeah.
Well, levy's not my end of it.
I
so
know.
I'm not going to go into that.
I know. And right now we're talking reassessment. Okay, good.
Floyd, hang on. We need to extend time about 5 minutes. That suits everybody. We out of time.
Make a motion.
Make a motion. Mr. Moore makes a motion, extend time 5 minutes. Ms. Wilson seconds it. All in agreement, show hands. Close light sign. Mr. Moore's got the floor.
Okay, I understand about the 2011 levy, but if you've got citizens out there that's right now and you do the reassessment, will that affect as far as today? In other words, if you put it off 1 year, unless they appeal their assessment to lower their taxes, the bills that we have in the mail right now, but you understand what I'm saying? So how would that affect them? How much revenue would that, as far as Anderson County?
I don't see this doing anything with raising any revenue. The reassessment, basically at this point. You know, I don't see that happening. Now, when you do a reassessment, it realigns who pays. It always has done that.
That's my point.
Uh-huh.
That's my point.
Well,
in this case, it's going to hit the cap people.
Mr. Chairman, one question and one point. So, is it true if we vote to give you the extension, then the people who get a tax bill next November or whenever they send out the bills, they'll get the same bill basically that they got today?
Yes, sir.
Whereas if you reassessed it, a property owner could potentially get either a smaller bill or a bigger bill. Is that not true?
Correct.
All right, thank you. That's the one question, really two parts. The other key point that Mr. Moore has already hit on, I keep saying that the assessment is only one half of the mathematical equation that dictates a person's tax bill. The other part of the mathematical equation is what kind of budget county council passes. Because it's a simple thought. You know, you basically take the assessment of the county and divide it into the budget, and that tells you how many mills you've got to charge in order to generate that tax bill. So reassessment by itself is not the total issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Waters. One other point, I don't know that you hit on it, but part of this reassessment, even though we put this off 1 year, this will be the 2011 reassessment.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then in 2016, we'll have another reassessment, so it doesn't delay anything. Is that correct?
Delay anything. You stay on the same 5-year cycle. It doesn't push it back farther, no.
Okay, thank you.
But, Mr. Moore, the point I'm trying to make, I'm bad with words tonight, but if we do put it off, if a person's tax bill is going to go down, it will not go down next year. They will actually be paying more taxes, the same amount of taxes that they have because we're putting it off 1 year. They will not realize a tax break in their taxes. Is that true?
I would say that would be true for half the property owners, the ones that had transferred since 2006.
So, for instance, a house that's next to me, it sold 3 years ago for $270,000. It just sold for $190,000. Okay, if we do not, if we pass this reassessment off for 1 year, those citizens will not realize any tax deduction because it'll be the same rate next year. Is that correct?
If they don't, yeah, the ones that don't transfer, yeah, if they don't come in the field, but the ones that have transferred know the law very well.
Right. So the people that lives in the houses right next door, the same houses, they're not going to appreciate any tax deductions because property values have been lowered 1 year because we're extending it out. Is that true? How much revenue does Anderson County stand to gain by doing this? Can you answer that question? That's all.
Thank you. Okay, we got 2 more readings on this, and keep in mind, it will be putting off some. It's also, the pendulum swings the other way, too. Some people's taxes going to go up when this thing's reassessed, but they wouldn't have, So it's a sort of a, if I'm hearing Mr. Freeman right, what he's trying to say, I believe, words in his mouth, is his past experience is probably going to be a wash as far as the county goes.
As far as the county goes, it should be a wash, but, you know, the people that's going to hurt when we do it, it's going to be the cap people, the people that are capped.
Get this done. And I suppose one quick thing before we vote is, it's reason back, people still ain't understanding this reassessment and how it works. Mr. Crowder, things with my budget, because that's the reason back in February I asked Mr. Freeman to come and start talking about them about laying the groundwork. Mr. Crowder was asked to go on the radio station, give a talk, tried to explain it. And like I said, I'm all for it and told some council members, well, we can have another thing to try to realize what's going on, you know, because this ain't about a hoodwink or trying to get no more money for the county, what you call it, because it ain't one way or the other does, as far as budgeting nothing. All in, ready for the vote here. All in favor of the motion, show of hands. All opposed? So the motion carries unanimously. The motion carries with Mr. Waters, Mr. Allen, Ms. Floyd, and Mr. Dunn. Crowder in favor, Ms. Wilson, and Mr. Moore opposed. Thank you, Mr. Freeman.
May I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Is it any way at the workshop that you're going to talk about that we could invite the auditor, since Mr. Powell is reported on statements?
We can get that clean. We can get that cleaned up one way or the other. Moving on to number 8D, emergency ordinance number 2011-040. Emergency ordinance to authorize the short-term leasing of certain Anderson County space to Appalachian Council of Governments at the property formerly known as the Bells Building. Matters related thereto. Before we get this on, just clear up a couple of things, I think. If I'm not mistaken, the rent on that building, y'all help me out here if I'm wrong, but when I seen the lease on that building will be $956 a month. Is that correct?
No, so that's for the entire 6 months. That's that's the prorated amount that they're paying where they're at right now.
And also, instead of, it's going to ACOG, but it's really coming to us. It's just it's an in-house thing, because WorkLink's our thing, where Oconnor's got their WorkLink thing, Pickens has got theirs, and worked on this. And as far as us, and it is a shame, talk about our building over the shape it's in. The one they in now is even worse shape. That's the reason they want to come over here for a short term. Mr. Burns.
Mr. Chairman, we were contacted by Ms. Shay Razakis, who is head of the program. Ms. Razakis, as everybody will remember, worked for the county for many years in economic development. I'd like to ask Ms. Razakis to come up and just speak for a second on what the situation is.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Council members, enjoy being back here this evening. I do want to confirm that the lease amount is equivalent to what we are paying currently, which is, I believe, somewhat restricted by the Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor. The building that we are currently in for Anderson is owned by the state of South Carolina, and the state of South Carolina must adhere to what the U.S. Department of Labor tells them about what they can charge to us. So that's where that number comes from. Again, the lease would be between the county and the Appalachian Council of Governments, but on the Appalachian Council of Governments on behalf of WorkLink. We certainly appreciate the responsiveness of the county in this situation. WorkLink and the job search and job seeker services that WorkLink provides and that South Carolina Department of Employment and Workforce provides in the Whitner Street facility, and the business services that are provided at the Whitner Street facility. Those are really essential and benefit all of the citizens here in Anderson County. We are essentially a tenant in that building, and our landlord, the state, has told us to vacate as quickly as we possibly can. So this is, to our mind, an emergency situation. We appreciate the county helping us to identify property that would be available for us to occupy on a short-term basis, which is really the extent of our intent.
Anyone have any questions, comments, Mr. Razakis?
Ms. Razakis, I got a little confused there because my mind still has not wrapped around the fact that you aren't with us anymore. And when they said Shay Razakis, and I'm asking him, doesn't she work for us? And I forgot that you went on to bigger and better things.
Well, I am still working, as far as I'm concerned, on economic development issues,
yes.
But more from the employer services and job seeker side of the house.
Okay,
so very closely related to the existing industry stuff I did previously.
Okay, I know you're doing a fine job there as you did for us here.
Thank
but
you.
I do have one question. When I was told, when this was discussed with me, and I thank the person who came to me to talk about it, but Appalachian, the Council of Government, COG, was not even in there. All I understood was that the employment office was looking for a place to relocate. And what was my opinion on moving here? But, okay, so this is what, I assume was going to happen, the whole thing. But now I'm understanding it's workforce development, okay, development. Is everybody leaving or just that little part of it?
WorkLink, as part of the federal system of workforce investment boards, is responsible for all of the functions that are in the Whitner Street facility, including the unemployment functions as far as general oversight. Those people that work in unemployment insurance are employees of the state. They will be moving with us if County Council approves the emergency ordinance tonight. So everybody that's in the Whitner Street building
will be moving.
Here.
Okay, I know it may have been mentioned tonight already, but indulge me, please. Okay, how long will this be in effect?
I believe that the lease is for a 6-month time period, which is what we had requested. We were notified on October 31st that we needed to vacate that building and move all of the functions out. However, we are not supposed to be unable to deliver our job seeker services and our business services functions. So we needed to identify a facility that could accommodate the number of employees that we have, that would be accessible to the public, that would be on the public transit system and have available parking. And thankfully for us, the county did have such a building that would be available on a short-term basis. But it is not our intention to be there longer than the 6-month lease. We plan on identifying a permanent location, whether that is somewhere else within the immediate area or possibly a return to the Whitner Street facility.
Okay, another question, please. Now, are the citizens who made use of the place on Whitner Street will be coming over here now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do we have enough parking and all those facilities, and all those things to accommodate all of that, the in and out and?
Ms. Floyd, Ms. Razakis looked at that. We have the Belks parking lot. We have the parking lot over there. We have some parking here. She's going to request that her employees park not on the street but off-site, and that's being looked at, and we hope that we will have enough parking. Yes, ma'am.
Great. Good.
If I might, I met with Linda McConnell at the city today to discuss particularly the parking situation and asked for the city's input on where we should direct the employees to park to minimize the impact on the other existing functions downtown. And they are going to work with us to identify the most appropriate place for employees to park so that the general public and the citizens can still access not only the functions that we will be providing, but what they already enjoy on Main Street.
Okay. It's going to be interesting.
It will be.
Yeah, it's going to be. Thank you for answering my question.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Allen?
These are one-word answers. How many employees are we talking about?
33.
Okay. The asbestos that's in the building now, is it going to be torn out or encapsulated? Or do you know?
Mr. Allen, she may not be at liberty to answer that. It is going to be torn out. It's going to be completely scrubbed and redone. It's a bad situation, and they have to leave now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? We have a motion. Motion, Mr. Moore, to move. Second, Ms. Wilson. Any discussion further? All in favor of the motion, show of hands. Opposed, like sign, so the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Rock.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 10, report from the Finance Committee. Chairman Crowder.
Thank you, Chairman Dunn. The first item on the agenda is entitled Resolution Cost and Funding, and the intent of this item being on the agenda is not to try to necessarily discourage council members from doing resolutions, so please do not read that into this item. I was requested to give a report as to how our spending rate is keeping in mind that I believe that the expenditure comes out of county council's office supply budget. So whenever we do these resolutions, the place that we pay for them is out of that. If you take a look at the first page that's in the agenda, it shows that the cost currently of framing a single-page resolution is $35.50, a double-page $73.75, or a single page that's 8.5 by 14. So one of the things that I personally, as a council member in the future, if I do a resolution, I'm going to recommend that we use a different font type so that we can get more stuff on one page, so that we only have a resolution cost of $35.50. Or the second pages that you see are actually a recap of the amount of money spent since 1998 on framing resolutions. You'll notice that we pay one particular vendor, Art and Frame Gallery. The purpose, if you actually turn to page 5 of the document, you'll notice that basically for the first 3 months of the year, we've spent $500, $600, $700, $800 and something. So if we continue at this, what I call burn rate of cash, we'll be spending about $2,400 plus. So that's only for information. Nothing intended to discredit a council member or encourage a council member to stop doing resolutions. But often people say, well, where does the money come from? The next item on the agenda is...
Hold on, Mr. Crowder.
Yeah, I've got...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Floyd.
Okay, thank you. On that same topic, I wonder if we can start looking more toward the Pride Award. The Pride Award was to be given out to people to show them just how proud their county was of them. Everything that we do or have done have not always warrant a resolution. I think that we need to start looking at the Pride Award and maybe give out more of them, rather than this than these all of these resolutions. Resolution has good purpose, has really good purpose, but the Pride Award has purpose too. The Pride Award was done because it took an attorney at that time to do these resolutions. Plus, it had to be framed, which took a lot of money. But if you look back on some of the stuff we've done this year, all of it just wasn't resolution material or purpose. Some of it was just the fact that we were just so proud. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say I brought this to the asked the Finance Committee to look at this because of budget reasons. We asked in our departments to stay in budget. We need to stay in budget. We, as Mr. Crowder alluded to, we've only had the first 3 months of the year and got a long way to go to get back in that. So Ms. Floyd has brought up a good point. Me and Mr. Allen's discussed that before. It's something we all need to be mindful of, make sure we stay in, try to keep us in budget on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Dunn. The next item on the agenda is communications bid. We're not approving the bid because the intent of a Finance Committee is not to select a vendor. Basically, what we're looking at are the dollars that are involved. County went out on a RFP requesting 2 types of services. One is data services that connect either to the internet or the intranet. The intranet is actually a network internal to the agency. It doesn't connect to the and the second thing was to be able to provide for connectivity to the new 911 call center that's going to be relocated out at the airport, where they'll be using VoIP protocols, which is voice over internet protocol, for their inbound calls to the 911 call center. If you'll notice on page 1 of 4, a summary that shows who is currently, what our current bills are for the sheriff, the county environmental services, total solid waste, total airport, what our current bill is, what the charter bill is, and what the new AT&T bill is, and you'll say, well, why did we have such a disparity? I mean, I'm not a bidder, so I can't answer that question on behalf of AT&T. I will tell you that for basically just a little more money, if you go down to the second group of figures called total annual charges for telecommunication services plus current internet contract with AT&T, the current AT&T bill will be $126,150.36, and the charter bid with all of these increased services, a lot more services, more bandwidth, more inbound calling capacity. We can get all that for about $310, $317. So basically, what the Finance Committee is recommending that we recognize that the amount of money that's going to be required to pay our data communication and telephone bill is going to go up by $300-something a year, because Mr. Robert Carroll is the one who selects who the successful bid, not county council. Now, if you want detailed information, you can go to the corresponding pages, and I'll be delighted to discuss all of that with you. But the bid was broken down to actually show two different connecting points, one called the Metro E with a 100 to 100 megabyte burst environment, and the points that will connect off of that, you can read those as good as I can. That shows both our current cost, the charter cost, and the AT&T bidded cost. And then the second one is the managed VPN cost to be able to connect to that CB Ethernet. And then if you turn to the third page, you'll see the business DSL data support link that's required for different places. And then you see new services where we'll be putting in public internet up at Powdersville, the transportation office, sheriff's office, public safety, FAA, and the animal shelter. And then some big time services for the sheriff's department, where he'll have connectivity with what's called virtual upstate that allows them to actually see on a big screen out at wherever the EO Center is going to be located, actually what's going on at various sites around the county and even up to Clemson, cars moving up there. All of this is being paid for basically by grant money at the hardware part, not the data part. But we have to have connectivity to that, and we also have to have connectivity to the 100 laptop computers that council's already approved previously, sheriff to be put in his cars. But to be able to make that system pop, you've got to have this configuration data communications. So the Finance Committee recommends the expenditure of this additional, basically $400. A lot of big deal over $400, but so at some future council meeting, I assume Mr. Carroll's not here tonight, yes, so is he going at some future council meeting announce the bid winner or what?
We can do that tonight, Mr. Crowder.
All right.
If council approves the number that you stated, that would go to Charter Communications.
Well, the Finance Committee recommends this configuration. This money.
Have a motion coming to the Finance Committee. Doesn't need a second or any discussion.
Mr. Chairman, may I real quick?
Wilson.
I used to get lots of phone calls from constituents who were not happy with their charter service, and this will be a different branch of that company.
I got one today, thank you.
Yeah, and it will be the business division of charter, not the residential division. And
I would not have supported it if it had been that crowd.
I will make an off-the-cuff statement. This is just my opinion is, to some degree, I'm a little bit bothered by the fact that we're putting all our eggs in one basket. But the price is so good, I don't see how we can turn it down.
Hey, Mr. Crowder.
Yeah, the question I haven't seen all the documentation. Is this just a one-year contract?
It is a 5-year contract.
So it's locked in at this number for 5?
Yeah, and one of the things that when the charter people came that I asked Mr. Carroll and the charter people to explore was whether or not they would be receptive to a 3-year contract with a 2-year option, but keeping in mind that the original RFP that was issued by our staff was for a 5-year.
Okay. So there's no chance that there's going to be a big jump in.
Pardon?
There's no chance there's going to be a big jump in the cost the second year.
Well, it's not. This is supposed to be a flat term contract.
Flat for 5.
Year period.
Okay. Now, is in that contract too? Is there a boilerplate statement about either party can dissolve this if? Well,
there is a multiple boilerplate statements in it, but you cannot escape from it, for the lack of a better word, very easily. There has to be some proof, and they do have provisions in there for actually prorating the cost of downtime. While that's all right, where you get your money, quite frankly, the intent is not to be worried about the few dollars we would save getting kicked back on the bill. This is going to be such a mission-critical data system that, if it were to go down, we're going to be hurting all over.
I agree with you.
Like the hospital with the rat yesterday.
The squirrel.
Power, except instead of just at the hospital, it'll be at every government facility around here.
And I agree, and the price is good, and I agree with this. I just want to be sure that if the wheels fell off of the deal somewhere in the second year, that if something went wrong, that we weren't going to be stuck somehow. But I appreciate the situation we're in. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'm going to say Mr. Pitts worked very long and hard on this contract, getting back and forth and everything, staying in touch on it. Got what we could get. All in favor of the Finance Committee's recommendation, show of hands. Opposed, like sign, so the motion carries unanimously. Moving on, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Chairman Dunn. The next item are a series of capital requests, and I'd like to sort of put them all together if it's all right with council, if you prefer to vote on them individually. Yes, it's actually a series of 19, 20, 21, 27 computers, both desktop and laptop. The first 19 are being paid out of some Title 4D money. The second computer is a laptop that's being paid for out of the detention center's canteen fund. The third computer is being paid out of the sheriff's budget for a chief deputy's computer. And the fourth one is to put in 6 Dell computers in the treasurer's office. It appears that they had one computer that went out with a bad power supply, and all the computers in that particular office apparently are the same age replacement, and he is fearful that the other computers may go out, and we are now into tax season. It would be utterly disastrous for the treasurer if that were to happen. So we are recommending the procurement of all of these computers. It's our opinion that they do not affect the budget that council has previously passed. That in effect they're either new money or spending money already allocated or spending money that was earned through the canteen fund. So the Finance Committee recommends those.
We have a recommendation coming from Finance Committee. Doesn't need a second on purchasing capital request these computers for these different offices. Mr. Crowder just went over. Do we have any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Allen?
Yeah, just on page 2, I was just wondering on that Dell Latitude, the extended price is different than the price. What's that reflecting, tax or Because there's only one computer. It's on page 2.
Oh, that's the one on page 2, that's 15.
Right, 1599.
And extended 1699. I have a note to ask Mr. Carroll what constitutes, quite frankly.
Okay, I was wondering.
Was not in the documentation.
Probably a warrant.
I don't know, it's a good computer. Also, if I could, also over on page 3.
Go to it.
Wait a minute, was that the page one?
That's the same thing there.
Okay, well, there's a big difference in the cost of the same computer on the different pages. That's why I was wondering, if you go over to page 4, the Dell Optiplex 790 is $723.
Let's see, this one's a 990, and I actually went to Dell's website and looked at the configuration of these out of curiosity. A 990 is a more powerful machine, has greater capability to upgrade from 790.
Okay, and I agree with that, and darn it, I can't find the page, but I thought I had seen where the 790s, there were 2 different ones at different prices, and I can't find it now, so I will shut up.
You're quite not, well, 10C3 is the 990.
Yeah, that's the 990.
Oh.
The other one's the 720.
790.
But I had a,
Under,
okay, I'll yield the floor.
it's on page 10C1. It's the second line item. You've got 18 and then 1. See, both of these are, see, even there, you've got a 790 that's at 894.
Right.
And a 790 at 977.
Uh-huh.
Take a look. There are 2 quote numbers down there.
Yeah.
The quote numbers, if you go to Dell's website, which I go to from time to time, when you configure a particular machine, it will give you a number so that you can go back to it so that you don't have to reconfigure that again.
Okay.
It's based upon what options you actually select.
That's all I need to know.
Go down the menu of selecting. So apparently, the quote number that ends in 535, you'll notice the other quote ends in 934.
Right.
For the same machine. That had to be different quotes with different configurations. If not, you would have just say, well, why didn't I just, instead of say 18 of those boogers, put 19 of them. So in Mr. Carroll's and Ms. King's defense, if Mr. Burns, if you would verify that with Ms. King tomorrow, that those are different configurations. See, I could not call up those particular numbers because my user ID password is not linked to those quote numbers.
Okay, that was, I thought they might be different configurations, but I didn't know. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get that cleared up, I believe. Got any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, show hands. All opposed, like sign, so motion carries unanimously. Moving on to 10D, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. We're now on the Brownfield grant, the Anderson 2012 fiscal impact statement that was completed. I do want to clarify one point. The Brownfield grants do not require a local match. They require no local match. So, I asked the question when in the Finance Committee, I said, what I'd like to see in all of the grants is some inclusion of indirect costs where it's applicable, because the federal government does allow grantee agencies to embed within their proposals indirect costs to be able to cover the county's costs for actually administering these. So I'd like to make sure that when this grant is submitted, that what we need to see down here on this impact statement that adds up to $400,000 is some kind of star that says includes whatever indirect costs you're going to include in the grant. Indirect costs on a federal grant can be a big thing for local government. The agency I used to head up in Greenville, we made a significant amount of money that could be redirected to whatever we spend it for. in that agency by collecting those indirect costs. And I understand the universities in particular, like Clemson and others, really makes a good bit of money off of indirect costs, and do some great things if that's something. So anyway, the Finance Committee recommends, obviously, applying for the money, but we would like to make sure with the provision that that there's some cost in it. So that's our motion.
Coming from Finance Committee, doesn't need a second. Are there any further discussion?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I would like to know what this particular item was doing in the Finance Committee. This item was brought forth at the last meeting, and at that meeting, the Transportation and Planning Committee reported on the grant. We voted on the grant, and it was passed by this board. I don't understand what it was doing in the Finance Committee. It didn't call for any kind of matching grants. The Finance Committee didn't have to touch this. This did not come under the auspices of the Finance Committee. Now, if you had some problems with this and you wanted something added to it, I think that you should have brought it back to the committee without your taking it and doing whatever it was you were doing on this thing. But it had already been voted on. It was already brought before. Now, we were given a job to do, and we're trying to do our job in a way that we can all work for the betterment of the county. But if we've got one committee that's going to run everything, then don't waste our time. Just give it to the Finance Committee.
Ms. Floyd, I don't think it was no amount of thing. It was just, and I'll take full responsibility, and I'll clean it up and do a little bit better job of lining things. But when it comes to money, we put the thing in place, but I'll get it cleaned up. We won't be voting on the same thing twice. I'll take full responsibility. Finance Committee means nothing. They just clean it up and getting it to us. And like I said, any more discussion, they recommended this to move forward. So,
okay, Mr. Chairman, if anything that that our committee does, Transportation and Planning, if anything that needs to be cleaned up, please let us clean it up.
Okay.
All right, and I will give the same courtesy to everybody else and their little committees. This is all I have. I don't try to run the whole county. Only thing I want to do is do a good job with Transportation and Planning.
Oh.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes,
May I make a comment, Chairman?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
I quite frankly am amazed at the comment. Does that mean then if the Public Works Committee decides to do a particular project that has financial implications, that the Finance Committee is supposed to just idly stand by and not have any kind of input into it whatsoever? I think I need to have a legal ruling from our county attorney, exactly the scope of what the finance or any other committee can do.
We'll get that straightened up. I mean, I'll get with y'all and we'll get it worked out. Like I said, this is
Chairman.
I understand people's thing, but I think we're getting way out of whack here. We'll get this thing squared away.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Moore.
Personally, I don't see where any of this is relevant because everything comes back before the full council to be voted on. Any votes that you take in a committee absolutely means nothing because it all comes right back to the council.
Amen.
And we can hash everything out here. So it's pointless.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Floyd.
that's what I'm doing. I'm hashing it out right here.
Okay.
All right.
And your point's been very well taken.
I thank you so much for that, sir. But if something that happens in the Transportation and Planning Committee needs the attention and the recommendation from the Finance Committee, believe me, you will get it. I will see to it that we follow the necessary procedure and the necessary protocol. But this thing that you brought up today had already been voted on. It already been passed. And as I said, if you've got something you'd like to add to it, see me, as I will see you.
Well,
let's just move on. move on. I think we can beat this here to death, and we can sit here and on, but let's try to keep in mind about the government.
Yeah.
People of Anderson County we're trying to serve, all of us. Anything else?
May I?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just simply that anything that spends money or develops policy in the county, I find it very helpful for us to have breakout groups like we have here and then bring it before council. It gives us ample opportunity to review and for the public to know. I think this is a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion, show hands. All opposed? All abstentions? You abstaining or opposed?
I'm abstaining. I ought to
Abstain.
just vote no, but I abstain from the thing.
Motion carries. Mr. Waters, Mr. Allen, Mr. Dunn, Mr. Moore, Mr. Crowder. Ms. Wilson in favor. Ms. Wilson abstains. Moving on, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Floyd abstains.
I'm sorry, Ms. Floyd abstains. I'm sorry.
The next one is that there was some money available for a hazardous tree grant, and you'll find included in your packet where our staff was notified in the Parks Department that those funds were available, and so therefore they would like to have permission to garner those funds, and so the Finance Committee agrees with that.
Have a motion coming to the Finance Committee. Doesn't need a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, show hands. All opposed? All abstentions? You gonna vote, Ms. Floyd, in the way I didn't see you? I'm sorry.
I'm voting yes.
Voting yes. The vote was unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving on.
Thank you, Chairman Dunn. We have a significant number of transfers, and I can't emphasize the word significant probably big enough, but these are actually end-of-the-year closing entries, and so the Finance Committee has looked at them, and you know, we certainly hope that we will not have to run into this kind of end-of-the-year closing in future budget years. I'd hope that Ms. Davis would be here tonight because I did have some specific questions. Oh, she is here. I knew she was in Columbia.
She sneaked in on us.
Right. We need to extend the time a few minutes. We've let time run out on this item. Can we extend time 15 minutes? More extends the motion 15 minutes. Mr. Allen, seconds. All in favor of the motion, show hands. Opposed? All abstentions?
Opposed.
So the motion carries, extending time 15 minutes. Mr. Water, Mr. Allen, Mr. Dunn, Mr. Moore, Mr. Crowder, Ms. Wilson in favor, Ms. Floyd opposes. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Dunn. I reckon some of the questions I have is, for example, you made an entry at the end of the year, I think it was for solid waste, where you were recognizing the value of leave that was on the books. Was that kind of entry made for all other accounts?
Mr. Crowder, it was made for all other proprietary funds.
Only for the proprietary?
For solid waste and airport. Yes, sir.
Solid waste, airport, and how about sewer?
Yes, sir.
And the sewer?
3 proprietary funds, it was made.
All right. So that is not a general principle for the general fund?
That is correct. That just goes on the government-wide statement. It isn't reflected in the individual fund statements.
Okay. So if we have to pay these people out when they decide they're going to retire or they quit and they have annual leave on the basis, we have do we have a way of knowing what that contingent liability is to the county in the future?
We calculate it once a year for governmental accounting purposes, and we record that liability. So subsequently, if they are terminated, retire, then we've already got the liability. It has hit the bottom line on that proprietary fund. So it's advantageous to that fund to accrue it as we go along, based on estimates.
I see. All right. Other council members, do you all have questions about all these transfers? I don't want to be the sole.
Y'all had a chance to go through it in Finance Committee, and I'm satisfied, got your questions answered. I had a couple I've got answered between that, y'all didn't,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, I basically have got all,
I think Ms. Wilson's got some.
Yeah.
I don't put words in your mouth, I was
yeah.
just.
So anyway, the Finance Committee recommends that these be approved.
Wait, okay, we got a motion now, we don't need a second, we have discussion. Ms. Wilson, do you have something?
Thank you. It's really very distressing to go through a bunch of a series of transfers back in May, June, July. For example, on Department 5212, they came before us requiring that we transfer, I guess it was around $15,000 for fuel and oil. And now, in this set of transfers, they're now proposing to take $1,000 out of fuel and oil and put it into the house account for telephone. And this goes back to the efforts that we've made, all of us, the last 2 or 3 years, because this county never really operated on a budget for the previous 13 years, to try and develop appropriate, specific budgets for each department and each fund, and then try to live within those means. And on top of that, these were for the budget year 2010-2011. The fiscal year ends June 30th and begins July 1st, and here we are almost Thanksgiving, and money's still being transferred. If you look at the back of your book, you've got more transfers. Some of them are dated like the end of October. And I understand the necessity of keeping books open 30, 60, maybe even 90 days when you have bills made the end of the fiscal year, and allows them the 30-day cycle, so to speak. But this just seems to me, in some cases, I wonder if maybe, I don't know how to explain this from my scrambled mind here, but it looks kind of like they're getting more money for the budget for some of these departments than what had originally been allotted. Is that a possibility? It just, we put an ordinance in place that we were supposed to have no more transfers unless it was really an emergency, something unanticipated. And some of the stuff is just ridiculous. I'm sorry. And one of the departments, there seems to be a chronic problem in that one department, and it goes a long ways back, and it still seems to be going forward. When do we ever get some organization to some of these bills and expenses? I'm just kind of frustrated.
I understand, but again, I hope, well, I'm looking at things that this is, this year coming forward, we shouldn't have the transfers that we had. There's going to be some. Shouldn't be what it was before. Got to keep in mind, as I said again, some of this stuff is council's fault. You pass a budget with furlough days in it, and you don't have no, you take the furlough days off, not the money. They're going to have to be some transfers. I mean, that's it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that's the reason for every one of these transfers. No, I'm not going to say that. But I'm just saying we laid the groundwork for some of this, and I think we in pretty good and tough times to have the budget that we had and stayed within budget. And just to answer your question, it might not be satisfaction, but Ms. Wilson asked a question: could we be a way of getting more money in departments, something other than Ms. Davis? Is you care to respond to that?
Yes, sir. If it's between departments, of course, it would not increase that department. But if it's within that same department, it wouldn't. But if it's between departments, it possibly could.
Well, it's just troubling that here we are, November 15th, and the fiscal year began July 1st, with the previous fiscal year, 2010-2011, ending June 30th. And some of these are dated like October 24th. It seems to me like they ought to be 11-12 fiscal year and not the previous
No, ma'am. Actually, this is closing the books, the accruals we're talking about, the accounting estimates that we're required to make at year end, such as bad debt expense, the landfill closure that you see on here. So those, and the compensated absences Mr. Crowder was alluding to, those are one-time entries that are made after June 30. And
I understand that, but you've got other transfers. For example, the fuel and oil one that we had to add a lot of money to Department 5212 during a 2-month period, and now they're taking money out of that account and putting it into something else.
Yes, ma'am, and the charter contract that council just approved tonight should help this situation. The sheriff will absorb about $24,000 more annually for that service, these data lines primarily. So consequently, this department, won't get hit as much. So we wouldn't even had this transfer, if we had passed that last year. We'd adopted that contract with a different company.
So are they going to come back to us needing more money for fuel and oil? I mean, they were expressing great stress that they had increased fuel cost.
Yes, ma'am. At that time, as I recall, the local retail prices were like $4, and our cost was over $3 to the county. So, but then, thankfully, those fuel prices have come down. So that was an estimate at the time that transfer was made.
I think one thing too, Ms. Davis, is just say our budget was, I know it was a lot more. Say our budget was $20 million last year. These department might have been here, but we still stayed within budget overall within the money.
Most definitely.
Correct.
We're projecting, unaudited, that the general fund will be $400,000 to the good this year, even though these transfers are made. And the furloughs, weren't provided for, and all the other things. The property taxes not coming in as
building permits
projected. So, the departments have managed their budget good, I believe, and we keep an eye on it. And I apologize that there's so many transfers. We're diligently trying not to do that this fiscal year. And, all the departments were brought together and instructed not to. Mr. Burns, looked them in the eye and said, we will not be doing that this year. So he will be holding their feet to the fire if they do.
When we get to the administrator's report, I've got some questions on those transfers too. There's a whole new block of transfers. Thank you.
May I make one other comment?
Yes, sir.
If you turn to page 23 of the transfers, this is actually a reclassification where the sheriff's department in the detention salary wants to take the salaries that previously were allocated for full-time employee, I believe it's nurses, where they're now going to hire part-time nurses so that they can get more bang for their buck. So this is just a reclassification of salary from salary to part-time. So this is actually touching this year's budget, whereas all these other transfers are for the prior fiscal year.
And that is projected to save money, according to Major Bryant.
All right.
You think,
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Allen?
Yeah, I just had a question back on page 2. The money transferred for legal. What legal? Do you know what that entails?
That's just the remaining transfer we need, Mr. Allen, for general legal for the whole year.
Does this include the lawsuit that we've talked about so many times?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. This thing's been going on for 2 years now, almost, and I've stated before, and I'm telling you this again because I'm hearing from my constituents, they're upset about the amount of money being spent. I don't know what the exact dollar amount is right now, but it just keeps going and going and going. If the court across the street can't make a decision, and if the grand jury can't make a decision, then they need to fish or cut bait. I don't think I can't vote for this in entirety unless we pull this one section out, and that's all I have to say about it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Floyd.
I too have some of the same concerns about this this legal thing. It says to cover costs of legal expenditures related to lawsuits. What type of work are they doing now? I thought the last time when we when the council voted on that money, it was said that they needed to find out some information for the Justice Department, and then we were told that the Justice Department finds their own information. But what is this for? What type of legal work? Are they doing more searches, or just what is it?
Mr. Burns, I don't think I'm
Okay, Mr. Burns or Mr. Pitts?
The legal is the general county legal, plus this lawsuits. One, the lawsuit brought against the county by Mr. Cunningham, the one the county has against Mr. Preston.
Okay, you still doing fact-finding work for that?
No, ma'am.
So?
Can I answer?
Yes, sir.
They are being depositions and stuff like that, and them lawyers are getting charged. That's where some of this is coming from.
Yes.
Okay, but when we paid our attorneys for this, that didn't include the depositions and the work they have to do?
This includes the depositions.
I beg your pardon?
The depositions are part of the legal bill.
So they need more depositions?
Yes, ma'am.
The other side does too.
Excuse me. It doesn't make any sense. Sir?
I wasn't talking to you. Go ahead.
Okay. It doesn't make any sense. And people are actually wondering, they are questioning our sense, because we keep doing this and we keep doing this and we keep saying it's for the attorney. When I have to have an attorney, I pay him or her a set fee. They don't come back to me for some more money for a deposition. That's included in the payment that I made. And so I just don't understand this, and the people don't understand it.
Crowder, would you amend your thing to move everything forward but the legal bills? We'll pull them out separate and we'll vote on it.
Okay, I'll make an amended motion, Chairman Dunn, to take out the $18,000, which is shown on page 2 from the recommendation.
Have a motion come finally in a second. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, show of hands. All opposed, like sign, so motion carries unanimously. Now if you'd put the...
All right, well, quite frankly, technically this money's already been spent. I hate to say it. Isn't that true?
Just make your motion, Mr. Crowder.
I make a motion that this item be approved.
Have a motion, second, Mr. Moore. Now any discussion? I too want to echo, I just get on the floor. This money has been spent, and they are, just clear up things. Don't dispute what Ms. Floyd and her attorneys arrangements they have, but attorneys, most of them get paid by the hour, whatever it is. I know I've been asked to give a deposition this coming month, and so that's going to take things. I don't know how many. Believe you me, I could save them some money. I wish they'd leave me alone, but they won't. So I got to go. Someone's got to pay for it. But and like I said, these bills have been occurred, and they aren't just lawsuits, investigations, and general things, grand scheme of things. I wish didn't have it neither, and they are watching. I think the administrator and his staff is watching very close eyes on this and holding it to the thing by attorney fees. Anyone else have any discussion? Ms. Floyd.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would like to know, please, from our attorney as well as our administrator, I would like to know the total cost as it stands now.
We can get that for you in the morning. That's no problem.
Yeah, right. You say that now.
No, I'm saying it now, but it'll be true in the morning.
Okay, we shall see.
Anything else? All in favor of the motion, show of hands. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All in favor? All opposed? So the motion carries. Mr. Waters, Dunn, Mr. Moore, Mr. Crowder, Ms. Wilson in favor, Ms. Floyd, Mr. Allen opposes. Moving on, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we have an animal shelter employee reclassification. We were requested to approve a reclassification of an employee from refresh my memory.
Caretaker 1, Mr. Crowder, to caretaker 2.
That's right. Got it. From a caretaker 1 to a caretaker 2.
Some finance committee doesn't need a second or any discussion. All in favor of the motion, show of hands. All opposed, like sign, so the motion carries unanimously. Moving on, Mr. Chairman.
All right, the last item it actually is a result of recommendations that have been continuously made from this podium up here, from this forum, a resolution respectfully request South Carolina General Assembly lower the assessment ratio used to calculate property tax for industrial property and matters related hereto. So this resolution is just an encouragement to our local legislative delegation members to try to move forward on bringing some sense out of the way we actually do inducements to attract businesses into South Carolina, so that we don't have to develop the extremely complex fee in lieu of agreements, simplified fee in lieu of agreements, SSR agreements, and whatever else kind of agreements we have to have. So the Finance Committee brings this to you as a recommendation.
Have a motion come to Finance Committee, doesn't need a second or any discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, show of hands. All opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Mr. Chairman.
That concludes my report, and I'd like to ask for
Read my line. For no objection, we'll take about a 10-minute recess.
I need as to responsibility finance. So I will have to her committee take the approval. I will not work.